Hello, my name is Nell, and I have things to say about disability, chronic illness, and mental health. I live with all of these things in a variety of difficult ways, and here in my videos on my channel, I talk about them. I talk about them all with complete and often confronting honesty. And I do this to both reach out to people who experience them like I do and to let them know that they are not facing these battles alone, but I also do it to reach out to people who have no lived experience of this and to hopefully educate them about what life is like for those of us who do. If that sounds like something that interests you, I would love it if you would subscribe to this channel. Come back every Wednesday when I upload new videos. Let me know what you think of my videos in the comments section, and if you know of somebody who would benefit from or enjoy one of my videos, please feel free to share it with them. Today I want to talk about why you should really never ask why somebody is in a wheelchair, whether they are an acquaintance or a stranger. To boil it down, when you ask somebody in a wheelchair why they are in their wheelchair, what you're asking them about really is their trauma. Being in a wheelchair and getting into a wheelchair is not a pleasant experience. So when you ask somebody, hey, so how did you, how did it happen? That's often the phrasing. How did it happen? How did you, get there? They're not asking you what you had for dinner. They're not asking you about the latest movie you watched. They're asking you about possibly one of the most traumatic experiences of your life. So when you're thinking about asking somebody why they're in a wheelchair, I want you to think about a loved one of yours. And I want you to imagine them being in a wheelchair. And now I want you to imagine all the scenarios that could happen to place them in that wheelchair. Whether they were born with a disability, whether they had a car accident, whether they had a debilitating disease, whether they had some other accident that resulted in a spinal injury. I want you to imagine every single scenario that could place your loved one in a wheelchair. Now, I want you to think about all of these scenarios and think about which one would be a nice topic to discuss with a stranger. Which of these would be a nice thing that you would feel comfortable talking about just when you're, enjoying your day? If you were just enjoying your day and just minding your own business and somebody started chatting to you and then asked you to discuss one of these topics, would any of them be comfortable to discuss with somebody who did not know you? Because that's what you're asking somebody to discuss when you ask them why they are in a wheelchair. And I know that people are curious. I know that when people see somebody in a wheelchair, particularly when they are young, there is an element of curiosity. But is your curiosity really worth my discomfort and my re-traumatization? I don't think adults have the excuse of being curious. Children, yes. Children will go up to somebody and say, "Why are you so fat?" and not realize that that's not appropriate to say, that even though they're curious as to why somebody is so fat, you just don't ask that. They kind of get a pass because they haven't learned the social mores of knowing what's right and what's wrong. Adults should know better. And the thing is, if I went up to somebody, if I went up to another adult and said to them, "Where'd you get that scar on your face? Why are you bald? Why do you have such a bad attitude?" That would be seen as impolite. And yet when somebody questions my being and my body, that's not off limits. So why is it that my being is not off limits, but everyone else's is? Your curiosity is not worth my re-traumatization. And often my life is just about trying to live and just pushing my disability to one side, to be quite honest. The trauma of my disability, the things that I have gone through, I don't like to live through them every day. I don't like to think about them and dwell on them every day. I like to just put them to the side and get on with it. So when I am out living my life, and somebody that I don't know says to me, how did it all happen? Give me a little 10-second soundbite. Summarize it for me, a stranger, because I'm curious and I deserve to know. And I can't control my curiosity, so now you need to tell me. It is incredibly disrespectful because I'm just expected to fulfill your curiosity at any cost. You need to know what you're asking. And there have been times when somebody has clearly, I've realized now that they've just started chatting to me in line at a shop and, chatted to me and then sort of said, so how did it happen? And I realized that the whole time the conversation was leading to that. And so there have been times when I've trialed an approach and I've said, okay, well, before I share my trauma, how about you share the most horrible thing that happened in your life? And then I'll share mine. And they're taken aback. I said, well, that's what you're asking me to tell you. So if you're not willing to tell me yours, then I will not tell you mine. Please be aware of what you're asking. When you ask me why I'm in a wheelchair, you are asking me to share my deepest trauma. It's not fun. And it's none of your business. That's the other thing. Even if it wasn't traumatic to end up in a wheelchair, it's also none of your damn business. So just don't, please. Just don't. That's all for this one. Thank you for watching. Be sure to check out my Instagram and my TikTok. There is some fun stuff over there. I will see you in the next one. All right. Bless. I'd also like to point out that when a person with a disability and a person who is using a wheelchair trusts you, they will often tell you their story. You won't have to ask. They will trust you with that because you have shown that you're interested in them as a person and as an individual, not just as an interesting story. You often won't need to ask. So please keep that in mind. All right. It's goodbye for real now. Okay. Bless.